Thanks again for joining us on Season 2 of Depression Baby. Don't forget you can get the entire audiobook of Depression Baby for free, along with a free month of Audible, the world's premier audiobook service, at raybrodgers.com/audible. Depression Baby. Stories about growing up in Appalachia and other things, too. With my dad, Ray B. Rogers.
On August 16th, 1929, I came into this world kicking and screaming. I reckon that made me a Depression Baby.
Depression Baby is a World Songs media production. Brought to you by Depression Baby the Book, available in Kindle, paperback, and hardcover, and soon audiobook at raybrodgers.com.
The tobacco beds. There are many kinds of beds: hospital beds, queen and king size beds, flower beds, but how many of you know about tobacco beds? Back in the 30s and 40s, when I was growing up in western North Carolina, tobacco beds were very common. Almost every farm would have one or more. They could be 20 to 30 or even 45 feet long and about 5 feet wide, depending on how big the farmer's tobacco allotment might be. In those days, each farmer had to apply to the federal government for an allotment before any tobacco could be planted. The government could control the supply and price of tobacco, subject to the vagaries of nature such as drought and flood. The size of the allotment could contribute greatly in determining the value of the farm. During the winter, the farmer would pile brush on the tobacco bed site, and in early spring the brush would be burned. The heat from the fire would destroy the weed seeds, and the bed would then be virtually weed-free. The tobacco seeds were then sowed into the bed, and the bed was covered with a white mesh material to protect the bed from birds and other animals, as well as from frost. Having an abundance of healthy tobacco plants to plant on the allotment was extremely important, since tobacco was the cash crop for most farmers. Grandfather Medford let my brother Mark use his land to raise tobacco to pay for some of his college education. Mark didn't have an allotment, so he paid a penalty to the government and still did quite well with the cash flow. There was a lot of hard work involved in raising a tobacco crop. First, a successful tobacco bed. Then the plants had to be set out, and water had to be carried in buckets to water them, and weeds had to be chopped out with a hoe. Later, the tobacco started to develop seed heads. These had to be cut off, called topping, so that the energy of the plant went to develop larger leaves. When mature, the tobacco stalks had to be cut and strung on tobacco sticks. The tobacco was then transported to the tobacco barn, where poles had been installed to hang the tobacco in order for it to cure. Little boys would sometimes get some of the tobacco and roll their own cigarettes, and even have a smoke behind the tobacco barn. Yep, some of us got caught. Some little boys and girls also occasionally smoked rabbit tobacco to imitate the grown-ups. My wife Lucy has confessed to doing this. The farmers in western North Carolina grew burley tobacco to supply the nicotine kick. Flue-cured tobacco, which enhanced the flavor of the cigarettes, was prevalent in eastern North Carolina. After the tobacco was cured, the leaves had to be sorted and graded into brights, the largest and most valuable of the leaves, and lugs and tips and reds. The tobacco had to be in case in order to be stripped from the stalk without crumbling. Encase meant that the amount of moisture in the leaves was just right for handling. The various grades of leaves were then tied into hands and stacked neatly when taken to the tobacco warehouse for auction. Regardless of how good the quality of the tobacco, the farmer was at the mercy of the tobacco companies who were bidding on their product, which had taken many, many hours of work to produce and bring to the floor of the auction warehouse. Tobacco from the farmer who took great care and knew the process well was rewarded with higher prices. Tobacco brought cash to the farmer, but it eventually brought disease and early death to millions. All of the movie stars of the time were smoking in their films. This was a cool thing to do. Even President Franklin Delano Roosevelt displayed a long cigarette holder as he unknowingly set a bad example to his many supporters. It was never difficult for me to choose a Christmas gift for my grandfathers. They both preferred Apple brand chewing tobacco, so I gave them each a little box of chewing tobacco plugs. Some of the churchmen of the day preached against the use of tobacco, but most people did not heed them. Nor did I until 2 months before the original Surgeon General's report. Maybe I had a premonition, or maybe it was just blind luck. Now, smokers are exiled to special rooms or made to stand outside of public buildings to draw on what the owner of Atlanta's Varsity Drive-In called coffin nails. No smoking on planes eventually happened too. It was a long time coming. It seems that the Great White Father in Washington spoke with forked tongue when he told us not to smoke for health reasons, but on the other hand maintained price support for the tobacco. We always knew that spring was here when the tobacco beds appeared on the hillsides, along with the spring flowers. But we now know that the tobacco beds brought more than hard work for the farmers and a little hard-earned cash in the farmers' pockets.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Depression Baby. And if you did, my dad has one important request. If this podcast brought a little smile to your day, would you please consider right now subscribing for free to the podcast and kindly leaving a nice 5-star rating and review on iTunes. You can make the difference in getting Depression Baby in front of a wider audience and help preserve this disappearing legacy. Also, you can get the entire audiobook of Depression Baby, the complete stories, for free at raybyrogers.com/audible. That's AUDIBLE. Thanks to our audio and musical contributors, including our friend Lobo Loco. You can find out more about him and all the rest of the music and audio in the show notes at, you guessed it, raybyrogers.com. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on Depression Baby.